seeking truths about the world, I heard lots of interesting truths from so-called spiritual people, but then saw their lives never match their truths. And then, as I started to get older, realized that science was where I would go find my truths about life. And so I was not a spiritual person at all, got into the science, and was, of course, ingrained with the conventional beliefs of Darwinian biology and genes control life and genetic automatons, biochemical machines, all that kind of stuff. And I had the great fortune of getting my PhD at the University of Virginia under a brilliant scientist by the name of Erwin Koenigsberg. And he was one of the first people to clone stem cells. So I actually was doing stem cell cultures in 1967, so that's 40 years ago. Well, people think, oh, stem cells are this brand new thing. It's like, no, stem cells have been around for a long time, except a very exclusive club studying them. And the beautiful part about my stem cell research was, as I started to do this and I was cloning genetically identical cells, I started to realize that if I would take these genetically identical cells and put them into separate petri dishes and then change the environment in those dishes, that in one dish they will form muscle, in another dish they'll form bone, and yet in a third dish they would form fat by changing the conditions. You stop for a second and realize, well, wait, they were all genetically identical. So what is it that controlled why they became muscle or bone or fat? And the answer was very obvious. It was like information from the environment. So this started to lead me on a different trail than all my colleagues who were getting focused on the genome and, you know, building up their background to create the Genome Project while I was doing this. So I was taking the road less traveled at that time. I was looking into the role of how the environment influences the expression of cells, while everyone else was looking at how genes control cells. And yet, my papers were published in very prestigious journals, and the results were very clear. It wasn't even ambiguous. It was that the fate of the cells was primarily determined by the environment that cells find themselves in. So when I published this, I was, of course, very excited by this, but then found myself to be a very small crowd of one in my community, because I had violated, mind you, what is called the central dogma. The central dogma is the pillar of modern biomedicine today. It was a concept that was coined by Francis Crick, the guy, one of the co-discoverers with Jim Watson of the DNA double helix. And the central dogma simply says this, and you're very familiar with it, is that the flow of information in biology goes from DNA to RNA to protein. And this is established in all the textbooks. It's still in all the textbooks at this very moment. So it says information flows from DNA down, and therefore, since your body, which is made out of protein, and the proteins are coded for by the DNA, then we have bought the belief, as the dogma says, that your fate and your lot in life is determined by the genes you receive at conception. So we become victims of our heredity in this sense, if you understand it from this point, that you didn't pick your genes and you can't change your genes, and since your genes control your life, then you're a victim to those particular genes. That is the message that conventional science has been teaching. And the issue is, that's totally false. When I got out of medicine, and I actually looked backwards, and I said, you know, I never really looked up the word dogma, and I looked it up in a dictionary, and I was shocked, because the definition for the word dogma is a truth based on religious persuasion and not scientific fact. Challenging the dogma officially makes me a heretic in what was called science, but by definition now is more religion. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics, or Newtonian physics and Newtonian mechanics, what you see is that physics and mechanics are synonyms. So physics really means the mechanisms by which the universe operates. The new physics, quantum physics, was something that I really wasn't into, nor were any of my colleagues in the medical school. We were all trained in Newtonian physics, and the difference between the two is very profound. Newtonian physics says the world that we live in, the universe we live in, is a machine made out of mechanical parts. If you want to understand how it works, take it apart, study the pieces, change the operation. That's the basis of medicine. We look at a human body, it's a machine made out of physical parts. When it's not working right, change the parts by buying chemicals and drugs. And that's the way that conventional medicine operates. When I started to read the quantum physics, I realized, oh my goodness, the whole foundation of the universe is not based on a mechanical, physical universe. It's based on the invisible energy called the field. So let's say if I hold a magnet right here in front of you, you can see the magnet, but what you can't see is the invisible magnetic field. And so what it says is, well, we are physical things in our world like physical bodies. We're immersed in fields, electromagnetic fields, magnetic fields itself, all kinds of fields like telephone, cell phone fields, television fields, radio fields, whole ranges. What is the difference between the Newtonian physics and quantum physics is this. Newtonian physics focus on the particles. Quantum physics says, you want to understand why the particles take this shape? Then you have to understand the field. It's the field that controls biology. It's the invisible forces. There's a great quote by Albert Einstein, and it's simple. It goes, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. In other words, in the world of invisible things, fields, and particles, matter, it's the field that gives shape to the matter. This becomes relevant. It says, okay, here's the physical particles of my body. Why are they in a healthy state, or why could they be in a sick state? That's the physical expression. And the answer is, well, to understand that, don't look at the body. You have to understand the invisible forces in the field. And it's fun, because if you think about it, when you were young, at some point you must have had like iron filings and sprinkled it around a magnet, and all of a sudden you saw the iron filings form that pattern of the magnetic field. Well, quantum physics would look at this pattern and try to explain how come all the iron filings fell in this pattern without recognizing that the field exists. In other words, can you explain why the iron filings have this shape if you don't recognize the magnetic field? And the answer is absolutely not. The body and its cells are like iron filings. Medicine is trying to understand the nature of the body by looking at the iron filings. And quantum physics says, if you don't understand that invisible field, you can't understand what's happening in the body. Max Planck, one of the founders of quantum physics, talked about this invisible shaping field and gave it the name the matrix. And that, of course, has been used in the movie. And in fact, people have talked about this matrix. Some people refer to it as the divine matrix. My friend Greg Braden, who wrote a book about that, meaning not only is this the invisible field, the energy field, but it's equivalent to many people what is God and spirit. Invisible forces, whether you use the physics context and talk about invisible forces as fields, or you use the spiritual context that says the invisible forces are spirit, the spirit and the field at least represent the same thing in modern science. So science is bringing the spiritual concept of invisible forces into play into the physical world that was left out by Newtonian physics. Now the problem, conventional allopathic medicine is completely locked into Newtonian physics. Doesn't even bring the mind into the concept of healing. Medical students get about 15 minutes in their entire academic career of a thing called the placebo effect. And the placebo effect is simply the mind can change the character of health. In other words, if you believe that this drug is the miracle drug you've been looking for and you take it, your mind believing it's the miracle drug can heal you, while the drug itself was nothing more than a sugar pill. Now that's an established fact. 1/3 of all medical healings are due to the placebo effect. Okay? It becomes very important. Well, we left something out of the picture in the education. Not that it's out of the picture in the research. The placebo effect is when you have positive thoughts and it generates a healing response. What they don't talk about in the books and in the general mass media is something called the nocebo effect. The nocebo effect is the same as the placebo effect, except the thoughts are of a negative nature. And what's the point? It's thoughts that are powerful, whether they're positive or negative. And while we give attention to the positive thoughts, called placebo effect, creating healing, what we know and what we don't talk about is that a negative thought, which constitutes what is called a nocebo effect, is as powerful as a placebo, but in the opposite direction. A negative thought can not only make you sick, a negative thought can kill you in much the exact same power and using the same mechanism that a positive placebo thought can heal you. Psychologists tell us that 70% or more of our thoughts as conventional people are negative and redundant. Every day, 70% of people's thoughts are actually taking health away from their lives and actually bringing less quality to their lives, and they don't count it because it's just that little thought that runs in their head, and yet, scientifically, it's the equivalent of the placebo effect, but backwards. Medicine is not really the free avenue of research and investigation as we think it is. It is controlled by money. And unfortunately, this is where the pharmaceutical industry has undue influence and keeps us from looking at healing that does not involve chemicals and drugs. Only for the simple reason is this. A pharmaceutical company makes money by selling chemicals. If we talk about how you can heal yourself with your mind, then that product doesn't sell very well. It's not in the interest of the pharmaceutical industry to support free energy healing, and therefore it's a subject that gets no coverage except for that 15 minutes on the placebo and then dropped out of the system, and yet it is the most important new understanding, and it's not new because it's 100 years old or more. It's new only because we're beginning to look at it in spite of the fact that drug companies don't want us to see it. It's not in the interest of the pharmaceutical industry to support free energy healing, and therefore it's a subject that gets no coverage except for that 15 minutes on the placebo and then dropped out of the system, and yet it is the most important new understanding, and it's not new because it's 100 years old or more. It's new only because we're beginning to look at it in spite of the fact that drug companies don't want us to see it. The problem with the concept of the power of positive thinking is people just think, oh, well, if I just have positive thoughts, then my life should be affected, and this is why positive thinking has a real bad rap in the public. Having a positive thought does not in any way necessitate that those positive thoughts actually manifest themselves. There's a piece that was left out, and if you don't understand the piece, then you're shouting into the wind with your positive thoughts. Nothing's going to happen. There's the conscious mind and what is called the subconscious mind. On a day-by-day basis, the subconscious mind runs our biology about 95 to 99% of the time. So while you're having all these wonderful thoughts, that's not the conscious mind's not running the show. It's a subconscious mind. The programs that we got, that's the source of the problems that most of us face. And these programs could limit our abilities and take away our powers, which essentially they do. Positive thinking is a creative thought that comes from the conscious mind. Okay, so I sit here and I'm going to have all these wonderful thoughts. I'm going to close my eyes and visualize all these wonderful things. Now stop and go back to the mechanical character of it. A, I'm having these thoughts with a little tiny processor called the conscious mind, and I'm competing with the programs that are in the subconscious mind. So if I have a thought for being healthy or being in a good relationship, and I'm doing positive thinking, and at the same time, I have acquired programs in my development that said, you're not as healthy as you think you are, and you're not that good a person to have those kind of relationships. Then look, I'm now pitting my positive thoughts against my programs, and they're opposite. But here comes the other part. While I can try to maintain positive thoughts in my life using my conscious mind, this conscious mind only operates less than 5% of the day. That says 95% or more of the day, I'm operating from the other belief system. Do the math. How powerful are positive thoughts? And the answer is, unless the subconscious has the same programs in agreement as the conscious mind, power of positive thinking will not work. It will not work because you're competing against a much more powerful processor. We do not see the subconscious when it plays. The subconscious has programs in it that we primarily got from other people in our development. And the significance about that is that if we are operating from this subconscious mind and not seeing it, then we're also not seeing that we're playing programs that may not be in any way supporting who we are and what we want. The only problem was, it was your own subconscious programming that led to the life that you have. And that if you can understand that, and then try to work with it, then you can change your subconscious programming and change your life. As you're sitting at the traffic light and you're waiting for the light and these thoughts are running through your head, you can start to listen to them. For a moment, stop and be analytical and listen to these thoughts, and you start to realize you're saying things, well, that won't happen, or I'm not that lucky, I can't get that, oh, she won't pay any attention to me. These are thoughts. And then realize Since these thoughts are programming the biology, and these are the thoughts that are just running like a faucet from your subconscious mind, you're actually hearing what kind of beliefs you're dealing with. And the first level of really owning the power over your life is to listen to these thoughts. Because if you listen to them, you're going to have to stop and say, my God, if I listen to all these thoughts, of course my life is not pretty. The subconscious is the driver until you own the responsibility to stand in the front, or sit in the front, put your hands on the wheel and drive the vehicle yourself. The moment you do that, you have power. The energy fields out there, our thoughts are the energy fields, so can we tap into it? In fact, if you're tapped into your thoughts, then you're already tapped into the energy field because the thought isn't material or mechanical in the first place. It is the energy field. Once you own that these thoughts are important and you can hear these thoughts, then you have access to say, well, wait a minute, I decide not to, I don't want to hear that thought. I want a different thought. And that's when your conscious mind steps in and says, give me the driving, give me the wheel. Because the subconscious has been driving the vehicle all this time. And most of us think our conscious mind's like a backseat, passenger watching this car go out of control from the back seat, screaming directions to the front seat, and the driver's not paying any attention.
Greetings, fine friends. We welcome you to Science and Spirituality on Supreme Master Television. Our show today features excerpts of a lecture by Dr. Bruce Lipton, an internationally recognized authority from the United States on the connection between science and the spirit. Dr. Lipton is the author of several books, including The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. By training, he is an expert in cell biology and is a former medical school professor and research scientist. His research work in the 1980s at the prestigious Stanford University, USA, showed that the outer layer or membrane of our cells is the equivalent of our brain. By processing information from the outside environment, the cell's brain can affect changes inside the cell. He has found scientific evidence demonstrating that our beliefs manifest themselves at the level of the cells in our bodies. Dr. Lipton says that by modifying these beliefs, we have the power to fundamentally change our lives for the better. Now we present part one of our program featuring portions from his fascinating talk entitled Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love, which concerns conscious parenting, or how parents can set the best possible foundation for a child's future.
It's your interaction in the environment that selects your gene programs. If you're in a very supporting, nurturing environment, you'll express functions of the system to promote growth. But if you're in a toxic, angry creating environment, an environment that conflicts with your life, you're going to select different programs. Perceptions are also given a survival value. Each perception you see influences your life. And so there's a value when you learn about that perception, you give it a value of whether it's supporting your life or something that threatens your life. And that's very important because ever after that, when you see that perception again, you will automatically say, oh, I remember that threatened me. Or this was a great thing, I love that. And so what is loving or hating or fearing something? These are the values of the perception that you've acquired. You learn these perceptions. This is very important. What are the perception values? Well, basically, at the fundamental level, there are two values to perception. One, perceptions that provide for growth and reproduction. Things in your environment that nourish you, encourage you to thrive in the world, you give them a growth value to them. And you engage in behaviors of growth. Growth is opening up your arms and taking it in. Growth is things that are out there giving you sustenance and supporting your life. But you need other mechanisms of survival besides growth. You have to understand protection. They involve different activities. Growth is encouraging the system to facilitate its own homeostatic balance. Protection, you don't go into protection like, hey, open your arms up. What do you do in protection? You close them down. Interesting. Growth, open. Protection, closed. Same thing, humans and cells. Anything that supports your growth, you will move toward it with open arms. You will go out and get it. And the most important growth factor for a human being is love.
Love is what provides harmony to the system. Love is an energy that coordinates and makes the community a whole functioning system.
Here, Dr. Lipton analyzes the classic debate of nature versus nurture regarding what kind of personality traits a young one will possess when older.
Hundreds of years, nature, nurture, nurture, nature, which is more important? I'll tell you the truth. The answer? Consciousness. Reason? Consciousness can override anything you had in your nurture. Consciousness can even rewrite your genes. In fact, in cancer, that's probably one of the most likely situations involved. The reality is, consciousness is more powerful than either nature or nurture because consciousness can rewrite both of those. And we never talk about it. And the important part is, we never talk about it. It's more important than what we do talk about.
Even before a baby is born, he or she will gain information from the parents while still in the womb. Dr. Lipton suggests this information will influence how the baby will perceive and react to this world after birth.
The fetus is getting the same signals across the placenta. So as the mother experiences something, the fetus experiences why? Same hormones cross the placenta, affect the embryo. It's not a bad plan. Reason? It's nature's Head Start program. What's going on in the world? Fetus can't see it. So what does the fetus do? Rely on what the mother experiences. And as the mother experiences, the fetus will adopt and adjust its physiology to respond to what she sees. So the parents collectively influence the mother's environment. It's the parents that are shaping the genetics and expression of this child by their perception.
Please stay tuned for more from Dr. Bruce Lipton's lecture, Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love, after these brief messages. You are watching Science and Spirituality on Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Science and Spirituality. Today we are featuring a talk entitled Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love by Dr. Bruce Lipton, an expert on cell biology and an internationally recognized authority on the connection between science and the spirit. Eye contact and physical touching with their parents is crucial to a baby's psychological makeup and perception of the world when they become older. Without this bonding between a parent and child, behavioral issues can appear.
What is important? Direct eye contact with the child. The reason is the child has a moment window. At first, an infant can distinguish chimp faces from each other as individuals. It can distinguish human faces as individuals. But a little later in development, just after a couple of weeks, it can't distinguish the individual difference between chimp faces. It can only distinguish the individual difference between human faces. It's beginning to narrow and focus it down on who is the parent. Reason why. The eye contact and also physical touching is most important, is required to create an attachment bonding. The relevance about it, as I said, the child learns perception. Well, who's it going to learn it from? The one it's attached to. That becomes the teacher. Both parents can be bonding with their child. Reason why, and this is so beautiful, the child is programmed very, very quickly to determine the facial expression of the parents. If the parents are smiling and happy, that means everything is fine. How many parents are actually observing their kids when they're learning things? Most of them are too busy doing other things. If the child turns around, the parent's not there, then what is going to gauge whether this is a good thing or a bad thing? It's lost. Now it's not very clear. It was designed to learn very quickly by observing the facial character of the parent what was going on. Now here's an important point. If the bonding doesn't occur, then the child will not focus on faces. Actually, we'll start to focus on mouths, more or less. This has been found in 3-year-olds because that's the first time where you can judge autism. An autistic child does not look and recognize its own mother's face or its father's face from anybody else's face. It can't do it. When it looks at a face, all it looks at sees a mouth. It doesn't even look at the face. Reason? It lost bonding. It doesn't know. One of the consequences of improper bonding is the child will express the characteristics of attention deficit disorder, meaning the child will not focus on anything in particular. It will just be scanning and will not focus on things. And why is this a problem? Because so much of this bonding hasn't occurred that so many children are expressing it. The problem is that we confuse it with attention deficit disorder. Those are two different things. And the problem is, what then happens to these kids is, oh, this child has attention deficit disorder, give it these drugs, you know, Ritalin or something like that. And the reality is, now you've compounded the problem, made it worse. It wasn't attention deficit disorder, it was an attachment disorder that giving the drugs in no way affects this.
Dr. Lipton discussed specifically what parents can do to help their children be the best they can be through focusing on what messages they are sending to the little ones.
Until 6 years of age, a child is in a hypnotic state. Everything you say and do, it's learning, it's watching, it's observing. Until then, until 6, at that point it begins to express its own consciousness, which can still make programs, but then it's involved with the program. Up till 6 is the most important period. The reason is this. This is the period of enculturation. This is the period where the child has to learn all of the details about language and movement and how to integrate into society. This is the developmental period of learning how to be a part of a community. And why consciousness is not involved is it would distort the downloading of this information. So in this time period, the child is completely a tape recorder of all of the behavior it observes from the teachers called its parents. And all of a sudden, you start to recognize a very important problem that's going to happen here, and that is, then you were also programmed between 2 and 6 to have behaviors, and you weren't consciously involved with your own programming. And these are fundamental programs. By the time a child is 6, the parents could be gone, the child will still grow up just like the parents were.
If the child has learned behaviors from nurture that are not good or the best for them, things can still be changed, as consciousness, in Dr. Lipton's opinion, is the most important factor.
You can change any programming. Consciousness can override nurture any time, but you need to do it with a process. You just can't do it. It's a process of change. Educational resources and referrals. I want to provide you with 2 organizations that will give you all the referrals you need about changing programs, all of the nature steps of conscious conception, conscious pregnancy, conscious parenting. These are the Association for Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health, APA. This is the website, tremendous resources. And this one is called the Alliance for Transforming the Lives of Children, another website. You can download from these organizations details about the things that I talked about today, plus processes that can be used in creating a better relationship with your children, a better understanding of parenting. And in this process, the whole nature of it is very important for this reason. That is, how we parent our children is how they will parent their children. How we parent our children today changes the future of evolution on this planet. And therefore, our own children are the future parents.
We would like to extend our appreciation to Dr. Bruce Lipton for providing his insights on child development and parenting, and for reminding us that above all, love is the most important element in life. Please join us again next week on Science and Spirituality, where we will present part 2 of our program featuring more highlights from Dr. Lipton's lecture. Thank you, our caring and intelligent viewers, for being with us today for our show. Now please stay tuned for Words of Wisdom next, after noteworthy news, here on Supreme Master Television. May heaven bless the children all over the world with bright futures.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/SS.
Greetings, loving friends. Welcome to Science and Spirituality on Supreme Master Television. Dr. Bruce Lipton is an internationally recognized authority from the United States on the connection between science and the spirit. Dr. Lipton is the author of several books, including The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter, and Miracles. By training, he is an expert in cell biology and is a former medical school professor and research scientist. His research work in the 1980s at the prestigious Stanford University, USA, showed that the outer layer or membrane of our cells is the equivalent of our brain. By processing information from the outside environment, the cell's brain can affect changes inside the cell. He has found scientific evidence demonstrating that our beliefs manifest themselves at the level of the cells in our bodies. Dr. Lipton says that by modifying these beliefs, we have the power to fundamentally change our lives for the better. Last week, we brought you part 1 of Dr. Lipton's fascinating talk entitled Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love, which concerns conscious parenting, or how parents can set the best possible foundation for a child's future. Now we will present more highlights from his lecture in part 2 of our program.
Parenting is a way of life. The new biology reveals we are very, very personally responsible. We really should be understanding how we incorporate ourselves in the community of nature, not to dominate nature, but how to participate in the community. And this is also the effort of understanding about parenting, because we are a community of people.
Here, Dr. Lipton analyzes the consequences of living in fear and how important it is for organisms to grow in a stable environment.
When you're in protection, you cannot grow. Cells in protection close themselves off. So the more fear you're in, the more you shut your system down. The more you shut your system down, the less growth. And growth is not just from a neonate to an adult. A growth behavior is required every day of your life, for the simple reason, every day of your life you're losing millions and billions of your cells. If you don't replace them, after a short period of time, the attrition will cause a breakdown of the mechanism and disease. The more fear that you live in, the more protection you hold, the less growth you express, and the more susceptible you are now for disease. Because what have you done? Shut down the system. Everybody needs to grow every day.
In the modern world, stress is all around. But how does stress influence children in general? Dr. Lipton says that stress, especially exam stress, may actually hurt children's intellectual development.
So you shut down growth. That's the first thing you do when you get under stress. The system knows this. Those stress hormones cause the immune system to shut itself off. We live in a stressful world out there. Well, what does that mean when you're under stress? You shut off your own immune system. That's when you start to get sick fast. If you're running away from a lion, stressful adrenal system, are you going to use executive reasoning and logic, or are you going to use hindbrain reflex behavior? You engage in reflex behavior, not thinking. Point? When you're under stress, you're less intelligent. And the world, we are becoming less intelligent as a group because of the stresses that we're under. We're not thinking clearly. In school, we call it exam stress. Exam stress, try to think of an answer. You can't, because the answer comes from reasoning and logic. And when you're under exam stress, all you're thinking about is running out of the exam room going, ah! And so right away, you're not working on logic. And so the point is, what happens to us when we live in this world under stress? We shut off our growth, we shut off our immune system, and we shut down our intelligence. As a group, as a population, as a nation, we really haven't been given the proper parenting skills to really understand how to do parenting. And therefore, to try and blame yourself for parenting issues without having proper teaching in this area also means there is no blame. What I want to try to tell you is that, first of all, parenting, it's not a list of things to do, and I'm not going to provide a list of things to do. Once you see how the cells actually work, all of a sudden you say, oh my goodness, our belief in things like genes controlling biology and all this other stuff is not accurate at all. There's a new understanding, and what's really wonderful about it, it is really fully empowering.
The Human Genome Project was an initiative sponsored by the U.S. government with the key goal of identifying all the genes of human DNA.
10, 12 years of this Human Genome Project, and in 2001, the results are released, and what are they? The answer is not 140,000 genes as anticipated. The answer is 34,000 genes. In the issue of the Human Genome Project in Nature, a Nobel laureate, David Baltimore, he is the geneticist and a Nobel Prize-winning geneticist at that, very prominent in the world, had a special article in the issue of Nature describing the results of the Human Genome Project. And in the conclusion of his results, this is what he writes. But unless the human genome contains a lot of genes that are opaque to our computers, it is clear that we do not gain our undoubted complexity over worms and plants by using more genes.
Please stay tuned for more from Dr. Bruce Lipton's lecture, Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love, after these brief messages. You are watching Science and Spirituality on Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to Science and Spirituality. Today we are featuring excerpts from a talk entitled Nature, Nurture, and the Power of Love, given by Dr. Bruce Lipton, an expert on cell biology and an internationally recognized authority on the connection between science and the spirit. In this part of the lecture, Dr. Lipton will explain the interplay of the subconscious and conscious mind in human development. Also, he discusses how a child's intelligence is affected by their prenatal or even preconception environment.
We acquire instincts from genetics, and learned habits are stored in the subconscious. And the third level of perception is the conscious mind, which is creative, which is different than the subconscious mind, which is just learned habits. The conscious mind can create new ones. So the conscious mind is really important. The imprints were laid down just before the fertilization. So it's the attitudes of the parents within the few months before that conception that are selecting an imprint that will determine some very fundamental shapes and characters of their future baby. This brain is half the size of that brain. 50% of a child's intelligence can be determined by the prenatal environment and preconception environment. You can shortchange a child's intelligence 50% by living in fear. Conscious pregnancy. It's a very important understanding. So what's going on during the pregnant period between the parents is totally influencing the expression of this child and the future of this child. So rather than our belief that the mother is just providing nutrients, we must add this important fact: she provides information. She provides information about the environment. We're now beginning to realize that the prenatal environmental conditions profoundly change the physiology and development of the child. A new analysis shows that genetic influences may be weaker and prenatal environmental influence is greater than previously appreciated. It has now been demonstrated that intelligence is approximately 48% determined by genes, 52% determined by environment. Meaning, in a completely toxic, noxious environment, you can shortchange the intelligence of your child 50%. Just by your responding to that environment.
How does a newborn baby feel and learn? How does the brain develop in the first few years?
From before birth to 2 years of age, a child will express predominantly delta activity, which is very low frequency brain activity. When we express that, we're essentially sleeping or not being conscious. Okay? And it doesn't mean the child's unconscious, like knocked out. The child is totally present, but not engaged in what's going on. It's seeing it, observing it, and downloading it, but doesn't like interfere with the download, doesn't say, gee, that was a good behavior, that was bad behavior. It just watches you and learns the behavior. It's not being consciously involved in the learning. Subconsciousness is not consciousness. Consciousness is creative. Subconsciousness are tapes. Where did you get the tapes? Your subconscious was programmed before birth up through 6 years of age without you even being involved. You learn tapes about how to live. After you get past 6, this development of the prefrontal cortex region here, which is where our central source of consciousness comes from, self-consciousness, self-reflection, is an add-on, really. And as a matter of fact, it's an option. A lot of people in this world don't even use consciousness. The reason is you don't need it. Once you learn the program, it's just repetition. When you are not paying attention to your own consciousness, you are playing tapes that are not even yours. And you don't even see it, because the subconsciousness works imperceptibly. It's so fast that it doesn't even engage consciousness.
Finally, Dr. Lipton talks about awareness and community living, which are spiritual in nature.
When you live in a community, you share awareness. You might only be able to have one on your own, but when you live with 15 others, you get to share their awareness. So the purpose of coming together in a community was to expand awareness. Whether it's a single cell coming into a cellular community or a single human coming into a human community, it's the same evolutionary drive. More awareness, greater survival. In community, cells defer their own intelligence to follow the central voice. In other words, a community cannot exist if every member in the community does what they want to do. A community exists because we work together for a common goal and a common end. So there's a commonality to the thing, a plan that we're all following, a central voice.
We would like to extend our appreciation to Dr. Bruce Lipton for providing his insights on child development and parenting, and for reminding us that above all, love is the most important element in life. Thank you, our caring and intelligent viewers, for joining us on this edition of Science and Spirituality. Now please stay tuned for Words of Wisdom next, after noteworthy news, here on Supreme Master Television. May all children be blessed by heaven and reach their full potential.
Az első rész az, hogy az észlelés irányítja a viselkedést, mert ott van a fehérje. A második rész, hogy felbukkan a jel, de mivel a fehérje nincs jelen, ezért az észlelés jel a sejtmaghoz megy és aktiválja megfelelő gént. A harmadik rész pedig ez. Mi történik, ha egy stresszes környezetbe kerülünk, és nincs megfelelő génünk a stressz helyzet kezelésére? Az egyetlen módja annak, hogy a helyzetet kezelni tudjuk, ha megváltoztatjuk a géneket. Nos, a hagyományos biológiában a génváltoztatás egyetlen lehetséges folyamatát véletlenszerű mutációnak nevezzük. Minden tankönyvben szerepel. Mit jelent? Azt, hogy kémiailag képesek vagyunk mutációt előidézni, de annak a kimenetelét nem tudjuk befolyásolni. A végeredmény mindig véletlenszerű. Itt lép be a darwini nézet, mely szerint az evolúciót a gének véletlenszerű változása okozta. A hagyományos nézet szerint a gének csupán a véletlennek köszönhetően változnak. Egy cikk, amely John Cairns 1988-ban írt a Nature című folyóiratban, az addig igaznak vett biológiai alapok egészét változtatta meg. Egy újfajta mutációról számolt be, az alkalmazkodó mutáció. Ezzel a mutációval a gének nem véletlenszerűen változnak, mert a környezet az, amely a mutációt irányítja. Tehát a génjeinket valójában mindig a környezetben észleltekhez igazítjuk. A mutációk tehát nem véletlenszerűek, hanem a környezet vezérli őket. Az elmúlt évben napvilágot látott ez a másik nagyon érdekes cikk is. Egy baktérium kolóniát 5 kémcsőbe raknak. Azután mind az 5 kolónia számára ugyanolyan rendkívül stresszes környezetet hoztak létre, arra sarkalva a baktériumokat, hogy az életben maradásukért változtassák meg a génjeiket. Az eredmény mindegyik kémcső esetében teljesen megegyezett. Hirtelen az a kérdés merül fel, hol van itt a véletlenszerű folyamat? Nem véletlenszerű, az evolúciós változások mindig a környezethez alkalmazkodnak. Ezek az aktuális környezeti feltételek vezéreltek. Miniatűr, alkalmazkodó változások minden alkalommal ugyanúgy mentek végbe. Ahhoz a környezethez igazítjuk génjeinket, amelyben úgy gondoljuk, hogy élünk. Azért mondom, hogy úgy gondoljuk, mert az észlelés lehet helyes vagy hibás. Következésképpen az észlelés a hit. Ha ez a helyzet, értik, hogy ez mit jelent? A hitünk az, ami a génjeinket megváltoztatja. Az észlelésünk az, ami a géneket megváltoztatja, nem pedig a véletlen. Ez az ábra a Tudomány című folyóiratból és Cairns munkájáról, a genetikai változásokról szól. Ezt a keretet egy csillaggal jelöltem meg, amikor a cikk megjelent, mert akkor ezt még DNS anyagcseregéneknek nevezték, most genetikai mérnöki géneknek hívják őket. Ez a következőket jelent. Már tudjuk, hogy minden sejtünkben vannak olyan gének, amelyek funkciója az, hogy más géneket felülírjanak, ha szükség van rá. Tehát a környezetünkre adott válaszreakcióként mindannyiunkban megvan a képesség génjeink megváltoztatására, a környezeti igazításukra. Figyeljék, merre mutatom. A környezetből érkező jel aktiválja a genetikai mérnöki géneket. Képesek vagyunk megváltoztatni a génjeinket. ahogyan a szervezet észleli a környezetét, az eltérhet magától a környezettől. Miért? Mert az észlelt környezet és a valós környezet esetleg két különböző dolog. Mondhatom, hogy toxikus, ellenséges környezetben élek, miközben meg lehet, hogy az csak a hitem szerint van így, és a környezetem valójában nagyon is támogató. Tehát lehet, hogy az észlelésem eltér a valóságtól. De mire jó az észlelés? Figyeljék a kék nyilat. A genetikai mértéki géneket aktiválja. A génjeinket a hiteink választják ki. Viszont ha nincsenek olyan génjeink, amelyekkel az adott stressz helyzetet kezelni tudnánk, a hitünk átírja a génjeinket, hogy a helyzetet kezelni tudjuk. Létezik irányítás az életünk fölött, de azt a környezetünk észlelési módja határozza meg. Minden a percipiálás, az észlelés irányít. A harmadik következtetés tehát az, hogy az észlelés nem csak a viselkedést aktiválja, nem csak a gént aktiválja, hanem amikor szükséges, az észlelés átírja a géneket. Mit jelent ez? A génjeink határoznak meg minket? Örökölt génjeink rabjai vagyunk? Áldozatok? Egyáltalán nem. Mert az észlelésünk módosításával a viselkedésünkön is változtathatunk. Mert az észlelésünk megváltoztatásával kiválaszthatunk másként működő géneket. Mert az észlelésünk megváltoztatásával átírhatjuk a géneket. Az átírást azonban mégsem ajánlana, mivel az emberek 95%-a igazán megfelelő génekkel született, amelyek a túlélést és a boldogulást kiválóan biztosítják. A gond az, hogy amikor az emberek átírják a génjeiket, akkor szinte mindig negatív folyamatot indítanak el, hiszen eredetileg azok jól működtek. Rengeteg betegség, de még a rákos megbetegedések 95%-ának sincs örökletes alapja. A rákos betegségek 95%-a úgy jön létre, hogy az egyén észlelése révén a normál gének rákgének kiíródnak át. Emlékeznek? Korábban úgy gondoltuk, hogy az örökletes gének áldozatai vagyunk. Ha megértették az eddigieket, akkor talán most azt gondolják. Az, hogy miként látok dolgokat, mit gondolok a körülöttem zajló eseményekről? Ezek szerint elképesztően fontos, igazuk van. Hiszen ezek mind a hithez kapcsolódnak, mert az emberek esetében az észlelés összefügg a hittel. Tehát megvan bennünk a képesség arra, hogy bármit megváltoztassunk a testünkben. Sajnos, ha valaki eredendően egészséges volt, és azt megváltoztatta, az általában azt jelenti, hogy rontott élő szervezete működési hatékonyságát. Az idegrendszer az, ami észleli és értelmezi a környezetet. Itt van tehát a valódi környezet, és itt vannak a sejtek. Érdekes, hogyha emésztési zavarokkal küzdő beteget néhány izomsejtjét kiveszem a testükből, és jó környezetbe helyezem őket, akkor a sejtek csodálatosan kezdenek növekedni, egészségesek és jól érzik magukat. A testben azonban nem így volt. Miért? Mert valahol a környezet és a sejt között közbelépett az észlelés. Tehát minden pillanatban a hiteink alapítják a testműködésünket. Világos? Miféle hitek élnek a fejünkben, és azokkal milyen géneket aktiválnak? A sejtjeinkben található gének egy számítógépes lemez programjainak felelnek meg. Milyen programok futnak a testünkben? Kétfajta program létezik. Az egyik a fejlődést és a szaporodást szolgálja. Utóbbi a növekedéses formák. A másik fajta pedig a védekezést szolgálja. Amikor belépünk egy környezetbe, akkor vagy növekedési, vagy védekezési programot választunk ki. Egyes sejtet helyezek egy petri csészébe. Az egyik petri csészébe helyezett sejt elé táplálékot teszek, a másik elé mérget. Aztán várok egy kicsit. Mi fog történni? A sejt mindig a táplálék vagy az egyéb hasznos jel felé mozdul, mert a pozitív jelek serkentik a növekedést. Mi a helyzet a másik esetben, ahol a sejt valamilyen méreggel találta magát szemben? A méreg veszélyezteti az életben maradást. Tehát mit csinál a sejt? Nem közel húzódik a toxinhoz, hanem eltávolodik tőle. A sejtek mindig elhúzódnak a negatív jelekkel. Miért fontos ez? Ha mondjuk én egy sejt vagyok, és itt táplálék van, akkor erre mozdulok. Ha méreg, akkor erre felé mozdulok. Mozoghat-e egy sejt egyidejűleg előre is, és hátra is? Nem. Miért jelentős ez? Mert amikor környezeti jellel találkozik a sejt, akkor el kell döntenie, hogy növekedni, vagy védekezni fog. Ez azért fontos, mert amikor a sejt védekezésbe kényszerül, leáll a növekedéssel. És minél többször azt hiszük, hogy védekezésre van szükségünk, annál inkább leállítjuk a növekedési mechanizmusokat. Ennél fogva elkezdjük akadályozni az egészségünket. Mondok egy példát. A sejtek a növekedést elősegítő pozitív jelek felé mozognak, míg a negatív jelek elől elmozdulnak, ami a védekezést szolgálja. Van néhány olyan jel is, amelyikkel nem törődik a sejt, mert az nem befolyásolja a sejt növekedését, sem a védekezését. A sejtek vagy növekednek, vagy védekeznek, de mindkettőt nem tudják egyszerre csinálni. Ez csupán egyetlen sejt, de már említettem, hogy kb. 60 milliárd sejtből épülünk fel. Ha szemügyre veszek egy embert, akkor megállapíthatom, hogy ő éppen a növekedés vagy a védekezés állapotában van. Érdekes, hogy a legerősebb növekedést elősegítő jel a szerepe. Még a táplálék hatását is felülmúlja. Az a gyermek, amelyik szeretetet kap, nőni, fejlődni fog. Amelyik nem kap szeretetet, az elakad a fejlődésben. Egyes árvaházakban például a gyermekek bőségesen kapnak ennivalót, de figyelmet és törődést nem. A testmagasságuk, a testsúlyuk és az intelligenciájuk 30%-kal elmaradt kortársaikkétől. Legtöbbjük autistává válik. Milyen is egy autista gyermek? Az autista gyermek nem reagál a környezetére. Miért nem? Mert fejlődése során valamikor elkezdte a védekezés falait felépíteni, mert nem kapott szeretetet. Egy bizonyos ponton a rendszer leáll, és többé nem reagál a környezetére. Ez a védekezés legmagasabb formája. De nézzék, mi történik a gyermekkel. Belehal a folyamatba. Amikor félünk, leállítjuk a növekedési mechanizmusainkat. Amikor szerelmesek vagyunk, felerősítjük azokat. Ilyen egyszerű az egész. Ez két irányú utca. Vagy az egyik irány, vagy a másik. Létezik erre egy mechanizmus a szervezetünkben, amiben a hipotalamusz, az agyalapimirigy és a mellékvese szerepel. A hipotalamusz az agy azon része, amelyik felméri a jeleket. Adott környezeti jelekre az agy eldönti, hogy ez pozitív vagy negatív jel. A negatív jelnek értelmezi, mi történik? A stressz aktiválni fogja az agyalapimirigyet. Két variáció létezik. Növekedés vagy védekezés. Negatív jel esetében végül az történik, hogy a stressz aktiválja az agyalapimirigyet azért, hogy a test készen álljon ütni vagy futni. Üss vagy fuss. Emlékeznek? Ez a stressz reakció. Testünk két részből áll, ahogyan azt be is fogom mutatni most. Ezen a részen található minden szervünk. Ezek a belső részek a zsigerek. Mit gondolnak, mi a zsigerek feladata? A növekedés. Ezek az izmok és a csontok, a támaszték. Mire jók ezek? Védekezésre. Amikor üs vagy fuss helyzetbe kerülünk, akkor a zsigereinket vagy az izmainkat fogjuk a túléléshez használni. Az izmokat. A mellékvese által kibocsátott hormonok a zsigrekben lévő ereket összehúzódásra készítik, és a vért a perifériára nyomják, az izmokhoz, hogy készen álljunk a harcra, vagy a menekülésre. Mi volt a zsigerek funkciója? A növekedés. De ha a vért a zsigerektől az izmokhoz juttatom, mi történik a növekedéssel? Leáll. Stressz helyzetben leállítjuk a növekedési mechanizmust. Az immunrendszer a védelmi rendszerünk, de nem az oroszlánoktól véd meg minket. Akkor mitől? A baktériumoktól és a vírusoktól. A felszín alatt található dolgoktól. Tehát a mellékvese rendszer a környezetből érkező fenyegetésektől véd, az immunrendszer pedig a bőr alá jutó dolgoktól. Vajon szükségünk van az immunrendszerre, ha egy oroszlán elől kell elmenekülnünk? Tehát üs vagy fuss helyzetbe kerülünk? Nem, mivel az immunrendszer rengeteg testenergiát használ föl. Az történik, hogy amikor a mellékvese hormonok túllépnek egy mennyiséget, leállítják az immunrendszert. Amint stressz ér bennünket, nem csupán növekedésünk áll le, hanem az immunrendszerünk is. Ezt tapasztaljuk a munkahelyünkön vagy az iskolában is. A tanév végére mindenki stresszessé válik, és ekkor betegszik meg a legtöbb diák. Ennek pedig az az oka, hogy a stressz leállítja az immunrendszert. Ez olyan hatékonyan teszi, hogy szervátültetéskor az orvosok stresszhormonokat használnak az immunrendszer megbénításához. Miért? Mert nem akarjuk, hogy a beültetett szerv kilöködjön. Hogyan tudjuk ezt megakadályozni? Megbénítjuk az immunrendszert. Beadjuk a stresszhormonokat. Stressz idején mi történik velünk? befogadókká válunk a minket támadó dolgok iránt. Üs vagy fuss helyzetben ösztönösen viselkedünk, vagy gondolkodóan és logikusan.
Are you going to use reflex behavior, or are you going to use thinking and logic behavior to get out of the mess?
Igen, ösztönösen. Miért fontos ez? Emlékeznek, említettem, hogy a hormonok a zsírekben levő ereket összepréselik, hogy a vért a perifériára pumpálják. Nos, ugyanezek a hormonok préselik össze az előagy erejét is, és a vért a hátsó agyban nyomják, ahonnan a reflexzerű viselkedés ered. Stressz alatt kevésbé vagyunk intelligensek. Ezt tudniuk kell iskoláskorokban. Amikor dolgozatíráskor a 7. kérdéshez értek, azt gondolták, hű, ezt nem tudom. Ilyenkor érezzük, hogy egész testünk vizsel. Hogy miért? Azért, mert az első dologként vérzubog a kezünkbe és a lábunkba, készen arra, hogy életünk megmentése véget kirohanjuk a teremből. Ráébredünk arra, hogy erre a kérdésre sajnos nem tudjuk a választ. Azt mondjuk, se baj, nézzük a következő kérdést. Ez most egy egyszerű kérdés. De tudják, mi történik? Erre a kérdésre sem jut eszünkbe a helyes válasz. Miért? Mert amikor stressz ér minket, reflexzerű viselkedésre készülünk fel, és tudatos intelligenciánk lecsökken. Mit jelent ez arra a világra nézve, amelyben élünk? Minden alkalommal, amikor bekapcsoljuk a tévét, amikor rádiót hallgatunk, félj, ettől félj, attól fél, szennyezett levegő, húsevő baktériumok terjednek, stb. Mit gondolnak, milyen magas a népesség adrenalin szintje? Rendkívül magas. Minden nappal egyre betegebb és egyre kevésbé intelligensé válnak az emberek. Összefoglalóként megmutatnám ezt. A test fényképezőgépként működik. A következő pont. Bármi legyen is a környezeti jel, a lencsék észlelik azt. Tehát, ha a fényképezőgép lát valamit, a lencsék veszik azt, és képpé alakítják át, ami egy tükrözött másolat. A fényképezőgép tehát mindig egy tükörképet készít a környezetünkről. Az élő szervezetekben ugyanezt történik. A sejt olyan, mint egy fényképezőgép. Bármi legyen is a környezetben, a sejthártya lencseként működik. Veszi a képet és elküldi azt a sejtmagba, ahol az adatbázis és a tárolt képek találhatók. A környezetnek megfelelően a sejt létrehoz egy fizikai struktúrát. Az orvos megvizsgál valakit, azt fogja tapasztalni, hogy az illető fizikai állapota azt a környezetet tükrözi, amelyben él. Amikor kinyitjuk a szemünket, ezt a képet látjuk, amikor kinyitjuk a szemünket, és ilyen stresszel teli környezetet érzékelünk, az miként hat az életünknek folyamatain? Adrenalin, üs vagy fuss, leáll a növekedés, leáll az immunrendszer, és kevésbé vagyunk intelligensek. De lehet a világot egy sokkal jobb, egészségesebb képként látni. Itt van például Max Filperis extázisa. Láthatom ezt a világot, vagy láthatom ezt? Mit gondolnak, ha így látom a világot, milyen folyamatban leszek? Növekedésben vagy védekezésben? Növekedésben. Az, hogy miként látom a világot, az alakítja a testemet. A percepció, tehát az észlelés köti össze a környezetünket és a testműködésünket. De az észlelés valójában a hit. Hiteink egyfajta szűrőként működnek a környezet és a testműködésünk között. Hitszűrőink zavaró hatásúak, ha hiteink megalapozatlanak. Ha hiteink torzak, akkor olyan géneket fogunk aktiválni, amelyek a környezetünkhöz nem passzolnak. Mi tart minket egyensúlyban? Az, hogy az észleléseinket éppen tartjuk. Nevelésünk során szűrőkre teszünk szert, amelyek a környezet és a fényképezőgépünk között helyezkednek el. Ezeket a szűrőket elsajátítottuk a szüleinktől. Hiteink egy része már születésünket megelőzően belénk hívódott édesanyák és az ő környezeti észlelései hatására. Az anyák és az apák valójában genetikai mérnökök. Utódai fejlődése során géneket választanak ki bennük azért, hogy az utód idomuljon ahhoz a környezethez, amelyben a szülők élnek. Az előadás előtt borítékokat kaptam. Piros és zöld színű szemüvegek találhatóak benne. Hívjuk ezeket hitszűrőknek. Arra kérem önöket, hogy valamelyik szűrőt tartsák a szemük elé. Vagy a piros, vagy a zöld szűrőt tartsák a szemük elé, és nézzenek a vetítőlászon. Mondják meg, hogy a kép, amit látnak, a szeretetet vagy a félelmet ábrázolja. A szeretetet vagy a félelmet. Szeretetben vagy félelemben élnek.
Okay, now take the glass off and find the other glasses.
Most tegyék fel a másik
Okay,
szemüveget,
you got a different set of glasses now? Okay, put those up.
és mondják meg,
Are you living in love or are you living in
szeretetben
fear?
vagy félelemben élnek.
Okay, are you living in love or are you living in fear?
Szeretetben vagy félelemben élnek.
Well, here's the simple point. This is the beautiful point. Life has everything
A
in
legszebb
it.
az, hogy az
Life has
életben
everything,
minden
but you will
megtalálható.
only
Minden.
see
De
what
csak
you
azt
have
fogjuk
perception
meglátni,
filters
aminek a
to see.
meglátásához
And
a
you
kellő
will taught
szűrőkkel
perception
rendelkezünk.
filters.
Ezeket a szűrőket a szüleinktől és az iskolában tanultuk. Megtanítottak bennünket arra, hogy miként lássuk az életet. Meg tudunk szabadulni azoktól a szűrőktől, amelyek életünket negatívan befolyásolták. És ez nem is tart sokáig. A szünet után Rob Williams fogja bemutatni azt a módszert, amelyen rendkívül gyorsan képesek lesznek szűrőiket kicserélni. Ebből kifolyólag egészségesebb és a teljességet jobban szolgáló géneket választanak ki azon, az életüket gátló gének helyett, amelyeket eddig hajlamosak voltak kiválasztani. Végezetül annyit mondanék még, hogy önök mindannyian nagy erő birtokosai. A tény pedig az, hogy a tudás hatalom. Ezzel a tudással olyan erő birtokába jutnak, amellyel képesek lesznek befolyásolni életük alakulását. Képesek lesznek kiválasztani, mely gének aktiválódjanak, és hogy életükben milyen viselkedést fejezzenek ki. Önök mindannyian nagy erővel rendelkeznek, nem génjeik áldozatai, csupán arra kell rájönniük, hogy milyen hitek alapján választják ki génjeiket. Ha azok a hitek nem megfelelőek, akkor változtatni lehet rajta. Igen, változtatni lehet rajta.
Thank you very
Köszönöm a
much for your
figyelmüket.
attention.
Köszönöm.
Thank you.